Today we're going to talk about why indexing drives GHS compliance. There are three current methods of maintaining data. The binder system, which is traditional or outdated. An internal system. Some companies have invested countless time and man-hours in an internal system. A third-party provider. Some companies have chosen to partner with a third-party provider to manage their chemical inventories. There are two types of providers. One is a self-service provider, a shell model, and one is a full-service provider. Let's talk about the types of information that could be indexed off a safety data sheet. On this slide, you'll see most of the indexed fields are in black. These fields have been on a safety data sheet for quite a while now. Highlighted in orange, you'll see the new fields that are required by OSHA's adoption of GHS, including pictograms and signal words, hazard classifications, hazard statements, precautionary statements, and labeling information. Now we're going to talk about the methods of maintaining data. In a binder system, you have multiple binders in multiple locations, many hands involved, and many people managing that data. On this type of system, a company is relying on the employees to have a true understanding of the materials in order to find what they need. Internal systems. Think about the resources it takes to interpret the new standard, to agree and write the requirements, to build the system, to test the system. Companies often think that the business will absorb the cost of this project. But what business projects are you moving to the back of the line to build an internal system to handle your chemical inventory? If you're using Lotus Notes or an Access database, what are the impacts if the files are deleted by accident? Third-party providers. You may save yourself the headache of taking on an internal cost of a homegrown system. But if you're partnered with a third-party provider that is a self-service model, your company will be responsible for the time and effort to access the materials, assess the hazards, populate their system to get the promised functionality to work. Cost of managing data. In the binder system, you have the cost of the binder, storage. Oftentimes it would need to be fireproof storage. The cost of paper, toner, and ink. The cost associated with the risk of loss of information due to natural or chemical instances. Cost of managing the data in an internal system, the time and effort to get all on the same page while requirement building, coding and building the system, data entry into the system, testing to make sure the system works. This all equals money and resources being pulled away from your core business goals, unless, of course, you're in the business to create and maintain SDS management systems. Third-party providers. With a third-party provider, you no longer have the headache of requirement building, testing to an internal system. But the cost that you do incur internally with a self-service provider is you have to take the time to assess the hazards of the material, determine which data points you need to drive the functionality they promised you, and populate the fields, time, effort, and money that you thought you would be saving. Where to start? With the adoption of GHS, companies are concerned that they do not have an accurate inventory that reflects what they truly have in the facility. Employees that are in the facility probably walk by storage containers of some sort and don't even think of the potential liability there because the materials are no longer used. How are you going to know what you need if you don't know what you truly have? Searching in a binder system, how easy is that? Once you find the SDS that you are looking for, you are now relying on the employee to understand where the information resides on the SDS. In an internal system, searching information is slightly easier, but again, to understand if the version is the latest and the greatest, if this is the right material, as it may have been added under another name altogether, is still left up to the employee to determine. In a shell, some of the fields that you see on the screen may be populated for you, but often providers will charge you a per data point for indexing. Searching data in a properly indexed system should be easy and seamless. Profiling chemicals. In a binder, there is no other way than to manually track the data in a spreadsheet or creating and adding an attachment in a work area that you could build out to profile the materials that are in that area for things like flashpoints, VOC, possible carcinogens, and many other data points. Internal systems. Unless you and your team have built or coded every field in your internally built system out to handle these fields, you'll have a great amount of data entry to make sure that these fields are in your internal system. Profiling this data is a very manual process. In dealing with a third-party provider that is of the shell model, you will most likely have to pay for specific fields as add-ons that you are looking to profile, or the company may, as a rule, not index those fields at all. If you are in the binder or an internal system, there is a high chance that you are tracking regulations manually, and with the changes and classifications that come along with GHS, your TRI list may change from last year. There may be additions of materials due to the changes in the way the materials are classified under GHS. This may mean changes in materials that you have historically reported on. Internal systems have the same host of challenges. Think about the person who keeps up with the changes in regulations, and what about the regulation, a regulation like Prop 65? It's an ever-changing regulation. Does your system account for that? Can your system generate a report of materials based on a regulation at any point in time? OSHA has provided guidance on the adoption of GHS labels. Many companies that we have spoken with are jumping on the bandwagon. Why? Because they understand that on June 1st, 2015, all products that are shipped will be labeled and have GHS-compliant SDSs. They also understand that if they continue on the path of having two sets of label ratings, general employees may become confused and assess the hazards incorrectly, and ultimately the company will be held liable. Our running theme suggests that if you are using binders, you may have to invest in a number of black and red Sharpies and take some drawing classes. In the internal system, you will have to go through the requirements, build the code, test the functionality, but here you're posed with a new challenge, sizing the information to fit a label. Think trying to fit all that text and corresponding pictograms into a standard-sized Avery label? Here's the real gotcha. Every provider of SDS management systems will tell you, yes, of course, we can generate secondary container labels right out of our system. What they neglect to explain to you is that generating a label out of their system is as good as buying a package of Avery labels at OfficeMax and opening the package. Why? Well, because they would have to index the critical information needed to generate a pre-populated secondary container label. And many times the price of that, the price that they sell you the fancy shell will not support the cost to index that data. Companies will not know what they have in a manual system like a binder or an internal system unless they are continuously monitoring the agency classifications, versions, and revision dates of an SDS. Many third-party providers do not associate materials with versions, and this can lead to a system full of materials that, by the way, you are paying for, that the third party cannot even tell you which SDSs are GHS compliant and which are not. In closing, if you happen to be on the binder system, the adoption of GHS is a good time to consider how you track and index your business critical fields on a safety data sheet. If you are considering revamping the internal system, you will truly have to think about what your core business is and the effort that it will take to expand your framework. Is the business really going to absorb the cost, or are you simply putting off your core business goals? If you happen to be with a third-party provider, ask yourself how much work you're doing to maintain a shell with promised functionality that you are ultimately driving by indexing yourself. GHS is driving many changes to the chemical data information world. Will you be ready?